Hey everybody, welcome back to Bookish Daddy. How to get your man to read is what we're going to be doing today. I am a man and I do read, and this apparently befuddled a lot of you, a lot of people. My wife has been getting messages and comments, and even when we go to like bookstores, people will make comments about how did she do it? What type of magic did my wife work to make me read books, especially romantasy and romance? Look, I'm a little disappointed that you all thought that she had to use powers on me and I wasn't just born amazing, but you're half right. So before I get into how to get your man to read, I'll kind of give you my background. What really started me off reading was on my first deployment. I needed an escape from reality, from this world. And one of my bunkmates was reading, it was The Orc King by R.A. Salvatore. It is like the ninth book in the Legend of Drizzt series. And I was like, look, man, do you mind if I read this? He handed it to me, and I was obsessed. I wrote everyone I knew. I was like, look, if you're going to send me a care package, I don't want this, I don't want that. Try and find me the first three books in this series. And before long, I was like 32 books deep. Uh, Fast forward, life happened. I'm a civilian, had kids. Things got hectic between work, moving, everything, and it fell off. I didn't read for years. And then my wife came to me. She had Akatar, and she said, hey, I want to read this, but it's a huge undertaking. Could you read the first few chapters and let me know if it's worth reading or what you think of it? And I was like, of course, there's a problem, I'll solve it. And I was obsessed. I got back into reading. I finished all of Akatar, got in the Throne of Glass, and that is what started my journey. So my first lesson or tip would be use a man's desire to want to fix things. A lot of us, I won't say all, but a lot of men really want to solve all of your problems or solve problems in general. And we just don't know how. And it's easier to be told. So if you went to him with a book and were like, hey, could you read this for me and let me know what you think and if you like it so I know if I should read it? I think 9 times out of 10, he's going to do it. At least read the first couple chapters. So here is my second tip. Make sure it is a book that is short, attention grabbing, something that is just gripping to where when he gets a couple chapters in, he'll want to finish the book. And that leads me into my third tip. I think that this book should match his interest. You know your man, you know what he likes, whether it be sports, sci-fi, like space, whether he's into like mythology or history. There is a book for everything. So make sure this book that you hand him is something that aligns with his interest. Make sure it's fast-paced, a short book, and ask him to, read it for you. Like, hey, this would help me out. I'm already in a book. I don't know what to read next. Just let me know if it's worth my time. And I guarantee it'll work. So, to my next point, if he is not the type you think would ever read a book, but he is into like music, movies, TV, stuff like that, I think that an immersive audiobook is the way to go. At the end of this, I'll list a bunch of books for every category I think that a man would like, and that will include some immersive audiobooks. Dude, if he's into electronic type stuff, whether it be like 3D printing or watching tons of movies, stuff like that, I think an immersive audiobook is going to be the way to go. We won't debate whether listening to books is actually reading. I think it's a good way to get his foot in the door for you to like edge him into reading. And I think an audiobook is going to be a great way to get a lot of these guys that just don't want to sit down and read a book, especially if he has like a desk job, or maybe he likes to work on his car in the shop, or he likes to woodwork. There are tons of things. Even if he just likes to go out in the woods, hunting, fishing, anything like that, you could throw some AirPods in and give him a good book that matches what he's into or maybe what he's doing. If he's working on a car, I'm sure there's some like mechanic books, stuff like that. And I think that is another great way to get your guy into reading. My next point is really just sit down and explain to him that you want some quality time with him. This one sounds crazy, I guess, and maybe you've tried it, but I bet if you went ahead and set it up, like maybe set an ambience going, get a candle, go ahead and pick out his book and your book, whether you're going to be reading the same book or different books if you don't think you're like what you're into like lines up. Set the books down, tell him, hey, look, I set aside an hour for us to do something that I'm into that I think would be really fun, and have it all set up already. Go in there, have the music for his book going, have him a book there, and maybe have a beer, a glass of wine set out, maybe some snacks. Nobody's going to turn that down. Nobody I know would turn down some free hour quiet time to just read, snack, and have a drink, especially if there's already like an ambience set. I think that that would definitely get him into his first book. And back to my second points, if you pick a book that is like, will grab his attention quick, it's something he's into, he may want to do this again every week. You could try and set aside an hour to read these books, and before you know it, he'll be reading all your books before you get to them. You could even trick him into it by telling him, hey, look, I don't really feel like reading. I'm not in the right headspace. Could you just do me a favor and read my book to me? Look, it's the same as reading books to kids, except if you pick the right one, he may start to get into it. If he's reading your book out loud to you, you secretly just pick one you think he would enjoy. He'll be reading this book and maybe he'll start to like it. And I think it would be fun for both of you. I read to my wife all the time. Maybe not as often as I used to because we're reading separate books now, but it is something we both thoroughly enjoy. Especially, I try and do the characters and make it fun. We'll set some lo-fis in the background, and it's a good time. I love doing it, and it is really, really good together time. I think it's very good for the relationship to sit there and read and have quiet time together, especially if you have kids. If none of these other steps work, bribery may be your way to get your man to read. I think you could just offer him anything it is that he's wanting, whether it be certain activities, places to go, things to do. Offer it to him. Just be like, hey, you got to sit, you got to read a book with me, and make sure you pick a good book that's going to like grab his attention. All that being said, I would love to go over some books with you and give you some ideas for what I think guys would be into based off of kind of what their likes and interests are. And the first interest that I know a lot of dudes are into is sports, whether it's football, hockey, all these, there's tons of sports. There is a book for them. I know most are romance. That's the first one I'm going to bring up, The Deal. I have heard this is a phenomenal book. It's one of the top rated like romances that has sports in it. Whether he was someone who played before or just someone who enjoys watching, I think he might would like that. One I recommend that I have read is the Bromance Book Club, which I've already talked about the past few videos. It is by Lisa K. Adams, and this is about a Major League Baseball player, but he's also friends with hockey players, football players, billionaires. There's everyone you could imagine. And I think that if he's into sports, this would be a good segue into reading. Next is military. So with my background, I have a lot of military buddies, and one of their favorite books, it's not mine because I don't read military books, but it's The Lone Survivor. This is a historic retelling of a Navy SEAL team who gets caught in crossfire and is trying to get to their extraction point. It's riveting, it's sad, it is a true story, and it is something like if they're into like any military type movies like Band of Brothers, Black Hawk Down, any of these like super hardcore military movies, I think The Lone Survivor would be the book. It's every police officer, military dude I know that's like into reading, that's like the go-to. The next is one my buddy wrote, and it is Homecoming by Jake Weidmer. This is about a veteran coming back to his hometown to find that it has been overrun by drugs. and the local police is doing nothing because they're in on it. So he teams up with one of the only cops he knows is still good, one of his high school friends, and she is a deputy. And he just goes to town. He's got a tomahawk and a pistol, and he just wreaks havoc on all these drug dealers. Very short, fast read if he's into that. It's about a 10th Mountain veteran, so if he's a veteran, he may enjoy it. I think this would be a great first book for any dude that is looking for something that is military-esque. The third one I was going to say is called Guard in the Garden. This book, I think, would be good for veterans. It is about a veteran dwarf who gets hurt on the front lines and has to go work in a bakery. And because of this, he's having some hard times dealing with it, but he starts to come to peace with it and find ways to attack the battlefield, but in the kitchen because he can't fight anymore. Again, this would be for dudes who may have seen combat, or police officers, someone looking for something. Maybe they've settled down over the years and they're just looking for something about a veteran. I think this would be a good book. All right, next is for anybody, any of your dudes that are into video games like Fallout, Borderlands, maybe Skyrim, stuff like that are open world RPGs. My first recommendation is Dungeon Crawler Carl. This book is awesome. It is almost like you're playing a video game. And I think that if they're into any games like that, maybe Assassin's Creed, they're going to freaking love this game of leveling. It's funny, it's hardcore, and it is riveting. From the first couple pages, he'll be hooked. The next one I want to talk about is Ready Player One, and this is by Ernest Cline. Dude, this is one of my favorite books ever. I have recommended this so many times. If he is into 80s, 90s type video games, movies, or music, he is going to absolutely love this. This is about a VR set game where it has reached a point to where you almost can live in virtual reality. The creator of this system has passed away and left an Easter egg in the game. Basically, anyone who finds it gets his entire wealth. He was a multi-billionaire. They'll get all his money, his house, and the game. And it is about all these like poor people. It's almost post-apocalyptic. People are like living in shambles and they just go into this VR set to get away. But the guy who created the game was obsessed with the 80s. So everything is 80s games, music, trivia. If he's into trivia or like arcades, dude, this book is phenomenal. It is so well written. And from the first chapter, I was hooked. Also, both the books I mentioned, Dungeon Crawler Carl, that one's always hard for me to say, and Ready Player One are phenomenal audiobooks. So if he's wanting to go that route and you don't know what immersive audiobooks to get, both of these are super fun and very well done. One more for the video games, Empire of the Vampire by Jay Kristoff. If your man likes playing The Witcher, or even if he likes anything to do with vampires, werewolves, anything like that, or anything to do with like, I wouldn't say demons, but like the Pope and stuff like that, this is what he should read, especially if he liked The Witcher. That video game is crazy good, and that is what I compare this book to, is like Interview with a Vampire meets The Witcher. It's really good. It is a long book, but it will catch him from like the first couple chapters. And if that's the type of video games he's into, I think that he would love this book. All right, next, I know there's a lot of dudes out there that like space, sci-fi, Star Trek, Star Wars, anything like that. I've got some recommendations for that. First is for my Star Wars fans, Path of Destruction, which is Darth Bane's story. Look, I don't care if he's seen every Star Wars movie that ever came out. There's a ton of them. This is better. And it is what led to everything that is. So this is the very beginning of Star Wars, and it is freaking good. And the audiobook is the most immersive one I've ever listened to. You can even hear the guy like stepping on rocks. You can hear the bugs as he's swatting them and the lightsabers as they like clunk people in half. Dude, if he likes anything sci-fi and if he's into Star Wars, he has no idea until he's read this. It puts the movies to shame. It is freaking awesome. The next sci-fi I have not read yet. It is Empire of Silence by Christopher Ruscio. But I have been told that for space operas, this is the go-to book and series. It is the Sun Eater series, and it is supposed to be crazy good. The next one I also haven't read, and that is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. But again, everyone who has read this, whether it be girls or guys, has told me that this is phenomenal, especially if you like old astronaut movies. Was that one? Yeah, Apollo 13. Anything like that, if they're into it, this is the book to read. The last sci-fi book I have, I do not own. It is Red Rising, but it is also supposed to be extremely good, fast-paced, and just one that'll hook you immediately into the series. So if he's into sci-fi and space, he has to try Red Rising. That's a great one. All right, next we're going to get into Vikings. We all love Vikings. Almost every dude I know is into Vikings and Nordic history. I think it's a great one that would get a guy into reading. The first one is Oaths of Blood by Logan D. I don't own it. One of my buddies, he's an indie author. He wrote this. It is supposed to be Christian Crusades meets Vikings with magic system thrown throughout. It's got werewolves. It's got magic totems turning the tides of war. It is historical. It's supposed to be phenomenal. I have not read it yet. Next is Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames. This is about a bunch of retired Vikings who have had kids. They're all drunk, fat, and happy, and just in retirement. And then they are called back. I think someone's daughter is kidnapped, and they have to go save her. So I cannot wait to read this one, and I've heard it is phenomenal. The last one for the Vikings is Shadows of the Gods by John Gwynne. Really, it could be this. It could be Malice. Anything John Gwynne, I think, is a great book for any dude that's into Norse history or Viking mythology, anything like that. I think that John Gwynne is what they should pick up and what they should read, and that it would hook them instantly into the high fantasy realm. Kind of segueing from Vikings, we're going into Greek, and I have only read one Greek mythology book, and it is The Games Gods Play by Abigail Owen. I think that if your dude is into trials, like maybe he's seen Hunger Games, or maybe he's into Hercules, anything like that, Hades, this would be a good first read to get him into reading. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought the stakes were really high. I thought the banter was really fun. And it is a romantasy, so it would also be a step towards your romance novels. I think it would be a fun first book to get into reading. All right, so I know some of your husbands have to be in anime, whether it be Dragon Ball Z or Rurouni Kenshin. Who knows? There's tons and tons of anime, but he's never picked up a manga. We're going to get into some of those. The first being Witch Hat Atelier. I think that this would be a first good book to get into reading if he likes manga or anime. Next is Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. This is a little more whimsical, but animes usually are. I think this would still be a really, really good read for someone trying to get into reading. Especially if he's into Studio Ghibli films, this would be the book to read, because there is a TV show based on Howl's Moving Castle that is Studio Ghibli, and I think that it would align well. The next two I do not have. They are Attack on Titan and Berserk. These, I have been told, are phenomenal mangas to get into, and I think they'd be super fun and a good way to dip his toe into reading. All right, next would be for any of the guys who enjoy Asian history. Maybe it's Shogun TV show, maybe it's samurai or ninjas or anything like that, Eastern Western Asia. The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang is a must read. And then Sword of Kaigen, which I do not own, unfortunately. I think I've been telling y'all, I've been trying to get my hands on it, but the Barnes & Noble here has been out. I think, or I've been told that it is crazy good. I cannot wait to read it. And I'll throw an honorable mention in there too. The Emperor's Blades, if you're looking for another like Eastern Asian book, it is crazy good. It is about two brothers and a sister that all get thrown into three completely different lifestyles and try and overtake an empire. And it is insanely good. It is very dark. It is very graphic, but it is definitely worth the read. Next is for your men that are into horror or thriller. I am not into scary stuff, so I do not own any of these books, but I went to all the like go-to horror guys, booktube pages, and the top two I see, no matter what, are both Stephen King, and that is The Shining and Pet Sematary, and I'll even throw in it. Really, anything Stephen King. If he loves horror, edge of his seat type stuff, whether it's like, I don't know, crazy horror movies, death metal, anything like that, I think Stephen King is what he should read. There are other booktube pages that can really delve into that for you, but I for sure would recommend Stephen King. For all my nerdier guys that are into Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, I don't want to just say go read Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. So I'm going to give some stuff that I think fits it perfectly. And earlier, I told you what got me into reading was The Legend of Drizzt. The first book in the series is Homeland. Dude, it is crazy good. R.A. Salvatore is one of the best at building like just graphic details of everything that is going on. It's very atmospheric. He is one of the original writers of Dungeons and Dragons realms and characters, whether it be Drizzt himself, Wolfgar, Icewind Dale. He wrote all of it. So if your husband's into D&D or Lord of the Rings, this he has to read. A quick synopsis is Drizzt is a drow or a dark elf. He is born in Menzoberranzan, which is the undercity under the crust of the earth. Everyone born down there is evil and sadistic. They love to torture and kill, and they're all thieves and conniving. And he is the first one born with a conscience. And he finds out quick to keep his mouth shut about it. And it's a lot of the first book is his inner dialogue of like dealing with this, why his world is so dark and deadly. He is one of the best with a sword. He learns extremely quick, but he doesn't want to kill. And we deal with a lot of his inner turmoil. This has sentient weapons. It has elves, dwarves. It's freaking amazing. If you like Lord of the Rings, you have to try it. Next is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. Quick warning, I always give a warning when I'm recommending this book. The series is not finished. Book 2 is done. Book 3 we've been waiting for like, I think it's 14 years now. But I don't know of many books that compare to this when it comes to world building. It is freaking insane. If he likes Lord of the Rings, he's going to love this book. I mean, it is breathtakingly good. And the last one, this behemoth of a book by Brandon Sanderson, is The Way of Kings. Look, this book, whether it be physically read, audiobook, immersive, it's phenomenal. Everybody who has read this loves it. It is one of the highest rated books that Brandon Sanderson has. Yeah, this book is phenomenal. It is in a huge world. So if you get your man to read this or The Legend of Drizzt, because The Legend of Drizzt is like 39 books, if he gets into either one of these worlds, you've got a reader. He's hooked for at least a year. Another thing I know that dudes are into is Marvel, Justice League, X-Men, anything to do with superheroes or villains. Renegades by Marissa Meyer is a must. This book was phenomenal, and I don't even like superheroes. It's not my thing. I don't like comic books. But if he is into comic books, I gave this 4 stars just because it was edge of my seat. It really RoboCop-ish, but set in a superhero dystopian world. It is freaking good, and I think it would be an awesome first book for someone who is into superheroes and wants to start reading. These last few books are different niches. They are honorable mentions and books that I think a lot of dudes would be into. The first being the Dresden Files. These books are great. I don't own any, which is weird because I've read almost all of them. They are about he's a detective wizard who carries a Colt 45 and a staff, wears a duster and a cowboy hat, and he is ruthless. He is pure grit walking through the city. I think it's New York, Manhattan, something like that. He's walking through the city blasting humans and vampires and werewolves, getting all the ladies. He's just your typical dude. He is going through the town just wreaking havoc, and I think a lot of dudes would love the series. Next is for guys that like British humor. I know that's a niche I don't enjoy, but there are a lot of guys I've talked to that like it, and that is Terry Pratchett. The book I own is Guards. I believe it's the first in the series. If they're into British humor, Guards is where you got to start with it. Next is another Brandon Sanderson book, Mistborn. I don't even know what he would be into to like this. If he likes anything awesome, he's going to love this book. It is crazy world building. It is phenomenal. It is awesome. If he likes anarchy, if he likes assassins, cool magical powers, anything like that, dude, Mistborn is one of the best books I've ever read. It's got crazy twists and turns. It is way up there for maybe a first book. Maybe start with, I don't know. Mistborn is one of the first books I read. I think he'd be fine with it if he likes, I would say metallurgy, but that's a random thing to enjoy. But if he likes collecting coins, Mistborn would be a phenomenal book for him. If he has a lot of quarters, he'll love this book. And then the last book is The Starless Crown by James Rollins. Look, it's a hard book to explain, but it's good. It is basically a young girl is born into an apocalyptic world. She ends up being a seer and sees things she's not supposed to know. She thinks she's helping the kingdom when she brings it to the king's attention. Instead, she gets a death sentence. And then a thief, a drunken prince, and a broken soldier all band together to help protect this young lady. And it's their treacherous journey through the world. It is grim and just gritty. And I think it would be a great first book to get into fantasy, high fantasy, with lots of high stakes. That is my list of books and recommendations. Oh, I did say too, for immersive audiobooks, some of my favorite ones ever are Darth Bane, Ready Player One, Dungeon Crawler Carl, which are all books I mentioned, and Mistborn. I talked about Mistborn. It's got a phenomenal audiobook. Those are some of the big ones if he's wanting to get into reading that I think he would enjoy. The Dresden Files, which is a huge series, the one about the wizard with a 45, it has audiobooks too that are really, really good and immersive. I hope this helps. I hope it gets your man into reading. If it does, make sure you subscribe, make sure you like and comment. Yeah, I really do hope that it gets him into reading. I love this community, and the more the merrier, whether it be guys or girls. I only did this video because a lot of women have been reaching out to my wife asking how she got me to read. That's the only reason this is targeted towards men. And I hope that your man watches this, enjoys it, and starts to read. Y'all have a great week.